Hello everybody, good evening, welcome. It's such a pleasure to see you all. It feels like only Friday we were doing this the last time, and actually it was. But it was a very different crew. It's a huge privilege tonight to have the two guests that we have. It's really, we've been trying to get him in for a long time, and and evidently they don't realize that their microphones are live. But I'm thrilled that they've come to join us. A book has just been published. I'm sure you're all going to pick it up. That's one of the things they're going to be talking about. So let me waste no more time without introducing Ruben and Isabel Toledo. Take a seat, please.
All right.
So thank you so much for coming. As I mentioned to you, I've got a list of very, very carefully prepared questions that I know will tease out exactly how your careers have gone. And having met you both before, I know that you'll disregard them completely and talk about just whatever the hell comes into your head.
I'll be good.
So I'll start with this quote. I'm fascinated by it. You said, Isabel, that your mother truly loved fashion, unlike your father, who had style. And I think the difference between fashion and style is a perennial question, but I'd love to hear your thoughts on it.
Well, I totally could tell that my mother was all about the experimentation, the moment, feeling that moment. And she never had one particular look. She always just looked like she was having fun in what she was wearing, and she just loved to also buy clothes. I mean, you can see that she loved fashion. And my father always had a particular very strict and very him. It was always somehow, it looked like him. No matter what he was wearing, it looked like my father. I mean, and you met them both, and they both had a particular look. And my mother was always, I mean, you could look in the closet and say, okay, she loves fashion. She really experimented and loved to buy shoes, and you know, you can see that there's a definite difference.
It's interesting because Ruben, you've got a very distinctive style. And I don't think anyone would say that you follow fashion per se. I mean, many don't. But it's clear, you know, I could recognize you at 100 paces. I mean, what influences the way that you look and the way that you dress?
My wife. She makes my clothes, of course, whenever I'm not dressed like a slob. But usually I am dressed like an artist, so I get paint smears on everything. So my normal wardrobe is carpenter pants and sweatshirts and, you know, true dirty stuff. But then when I dress up and be civilized, I'm wearing Isabel. But yeah, I think what you were saying about style and fashion is her mom really gave herself over to the moment. You know, when it was floral, she went out and bought flowers. When it was plaid, she did the whole thing.
No excuse. She dove right into
totally
fashion.
Gave herself in, you know, to that. And style is almost like you're living in your own time. You're not looking at the clock. You're living in your own space.
But I'd suggest that there's a very distinct Toledo style, and you both have your own version of it. I mean, Ruben, when you and I communicate by email, even your emails have your own style, which is great. You should see these.
Let me tell you.
There's nothing bad about it, but it's a lot of fun when Ruben writes. He capitalizes certain words, so it's the most entertaining thing. You know, he could say, "Meet you at 3 o'clock," and you're like, oh, "Great, I know exactly what I'm doing." It's really interesting. And you know, as much as you can't, there's only so much you can do with a simple email and simple text. You do something with it. You know, you inject that Ruben Toledo style into it.
All creators have that fingerprint, right? And no matter what you do, your fingerprint is embedded into it. I think what Isabel does with her clothes and what I do with art, it's always your identity is part of it. The DNA is part of it.
You're constantly expressing yourself. You can't help it.
Yeah.
So that gives you that identity. It gives you the DNA.
Sure.
I love that because one of the things we talk about a lot in school is the fact that you are your own brand. You are, and some people disingenuously deny it, but you are. You just are. You know.
Well, that's a dirty word around our house, brand, only because people always ask us, what your brand, or you are a brand.
But I thought you got the whole thing from a branding consultant.
You know, I always say you have to be an artist.
You recommended them.
You must be an artist, and an artist has an identity, and eventually if you're good at what you do, especially in fashion, it becomes a brand.
Right.
But I don't think you start out being that way. That's a
mistake.
Well, I think people could read the recipe, and when they could read the ingredients in the recipe, they're not interested, you know?
I think the word you used is identity, and that's much more important. Yeah. You have an identity as an artist, whether you're a fashion designer or any other kind. And if people perceive that as a branding, that's okay, that's their word for it, but it doesn't change what it is.
Usually it happens branding because the more you do it. I mean, you don't become a brand the minute you do something, let's face it, unless you have a lot of financial, well, let's say as an artist, you don't become a brand. You have to do what you do for many years in order for that to be true, for you to become all of a sudden a brand or identified as a brand.
You grow into it.
Yeah, you
do.
No shortcuts.
Well, I mean, one of the things we talk about here is identifying your vision, your own, whatever it is you're trying to say, and then I hope we here give people the skills to be able to say that with their work. And I guess that's the same thing, identifying your identity, your brand.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think when you're at school, you should really take opportunities to not be focusing on your brand yet, and just try everything. I mean, really, make tons of mistakes. Because along those mistakes, you're going to find your own identity. You're going to find those mistakes that really stick to you, and ends up being your body of work.
Well, now's the time to make mistakes. Even when you're in school, when you're students, that's the whole point. You know, you should experiment enough and find your way around that labyrinth and finally get to who you are.
Especially if you're surrounded by other people. Because at one point, you should actually go within and work in your own environment at one point and find your voice. But while you're in school, you're being influenced. You're being you're just relating. You're collaborating.
It's free collaboration.
Yeah, the collaboration thing, obviously for you two, is fascinating because it's the way you work. Maybe you want to talk a little bit about how you work together and how that collaboration functions.
We have no choice. No.
Yeah, exactly. They don't particularly like each other. They said that'd be us.
No, we just look it over. We love what the other has to offer. I mean, it's not even, I don't think we call it collaboration.
The weird thing is people assume that to work together you have to think alike or be the same, and we're so different. We work in such different ways. We have such different aesthetics even. So I think that adds to the interest. There's always a clash of intention and a clash of ideas, and that makes each other's work more interesting. But we do have very, I don't do what Isabel does, and Isabel doesn't do what I do in a weird way.
And you actually can feel the border. You can feel when all of a sudden it's like, okay, he doesn't need any more of what I'm saying, or the other way around, in fact.
I mean, as an artist, again, if any kids here are artists or illustrators or painters, just knowing there's a difference between making and a difference between drawing it. Or I could draw anything in the world. I could make the impossible happen in a drawing. But then the maker, that's another sixth sense. It's really a sixth sense about gravity and body language and textile and motion and color, and there's like this whole other world that as a maker you have to perfect, you know? So I know I could never do what Isabel does. That's a whole other field.
Yeah, it's about having respect for other people's disciplines and knowing where your abilities stop.
Absolutely.
You know, you can do, I mean, and at school, of course, you should try everything, and you're not going to be very good at some things, and that's okay.
Right.
Find the thing you are good at. Yeah, exactly. I just was thinking of this. Yeah, I just remember this piece. Prince Charles apparently said he lost his temper one time and said, "You're not going to be a pop star." To these young people, because they were like, I'm at school and I want to be a pop star, that's my dream. He's like, you're not going to be, but that's okay.
Right.
You know, and I think that's the point. You might want to be the next Marc Jacobs, you might, or the next Isabel Toledo, but you might not, maybe you're not going to be, but you might be the next whatever it is, and that's great.
Although at school is when it's the time to try out every single thing, because boy, do you find out fast what you don't want to do. Oftentimes, that's how you get to what you do want to do. You try something out, and it's a complete disaster, or it's a complete disappointment, so you finally understand this is where I feel comfortable and strong, and I could grow here. So it's a good point.
And it's a great thing because you can also get reaction from a lot of people when you're in school, and people do react to what you all of a sudden are loving to do. And that leaves a memory. Yeah,
I think learning to listen to what people say and pick out the constructive criticism is vital as well.
Absolutely.
You've got to have a thick skin, and you've got to listen for the things that really are going to help you.
Right.
You know, I think
everything helps you.
Yeah, you're right. And learning, we just touched on the fact that you both teach, and you get so much out of that.
Yeah.
You know, and traditionally one thinks of the teacher as imparting the knowledge, but actually you walk away with, you know, with as much as you left.
Absolutely. Right. You always keep learning. That's the whole point.
So,
as we do.
So in terms of the creative process, and one of you, in the book, in fact, it says that lean times have presented opportunities to be more creative. And I think that's a common thread amongst a lot of designers. You know, I think when you think back to London in the 1970s, it was a terrible time for sound systems.
Is that an earthquake?
That was London. It's true, yeah. No, but it was a terrible time economically, and that's when punk arrived, you know, so I think there's a lot of testament to the fact that this is the case. But I'm interested in, you know, advice for our students. They're going to graduate and they're going to have no money, but that can be a time that's not going to get in the way.
Right.
You know, that can be a time to be your most creative.
I mean, creativity can happen on anything. I mean, especially on a shoestring, because you're able to push more the boundaries of what you have at hand. Because many times when you have so much to choose from, you don't focus. You end up just surfacing whatever it is that you're doing. You don't really delve into the depths of something. You don't really form it. You don't make it yours. you're just decorating with something. When you have limitations, I think that's when you really have to use most of your imagination to make something come alive.
When we first started, Isabel's collection was just denim and cotton and t-shirting. It was very inexpensive things because we couldn't afford expensive fabric. So everything had to be, I think a fabric that was $10 a yard was way out of our range. So, and this was a collection that was first at Bergdorf Goodman. So it's design is design, and good design can be done in cotton jersey. It can be done in you know, anything. It doesn't have to be an expensive fabric.
And in fact, for me, the fact that I was going to do denim and I was going to go to Bergdorf's made a big difference because I started designing things that I could envision a woman in Bergdorf's buying. And I remember all the satin lined denims and all these beautiful colors. And,
she still made it very special, but they were in fact very humble fabrics.
So it pushed me to use denim in a different way.
Yeah, I think there's a very important message in there, which is expensive does not make luxury.
Of course not. No,
you know, and people make the mistake of thinking, oh, I'll put a bit of fur on there and it'll be luxury.
The one thing that almost always makes luxury is time.
That's the one thing that makes luxury is time. If you can spend time focusing and developing your own ideas, and plus, if you invest your time in making something, believe me, the person understands it and feels it. There's a magic to that, and you know it. Even if it's a simple T-shirt, if
it's a vibration.
There is a vibration to it. We always call it the difference between a painting and a poster. Sometimes you want a poster, and that's mass-produced and fast. But sometimes you want a painting, and it's not for everyone. But sometimes you want that, and energy comes out of that. And same with clothes.
So let's talk for a moment about the first time you got paid for doing what you do. Ruben, you
yesterday.
Yeah, the first time you sold some pictures to some photographs for Fiorucci. So how did you feel? I mean, that's a special moment.
Unreal, yeah. No, it was unreal. It was I was still in high school, so the idea that I could make money from my art, I was spoiled. It happened so fast, and I wasn't looking for it. It just happened to us. We got lost on our way to the museum, and we bumped into Fiorucci. It was an incredible store on 59th Street in the old days. But it was a kind of the daytime version of Studio 54. But it was a real cultural mix of art and fashion, music, everything, photography, film. So it was a pure mistake. I was still in high school. I must have been 16 or 17, but this is where we met Andy Warhol and Kenny Sharp, Keith Haring, and just amazing people. But I was able to sell my artwork purely by accident, and it was sold as postcards.
Important was that he was able to use all the materials from school, and in fact, you were making money afterwards.
Yeah, which is kind of amazing.
That's what I'm saying. When you're in school, just absorb, do as much as you can with the materials that are here.
That's such a key message.
Use it.
You can do anything in New York, and that's exactly what happens. You walk around the corner and there's something going on, and that defines you.
Well, New York City is, I mean, come on, this is the city where urban living or city living is raised to an art form because of all the interlocking social circles, all the support system, and all the unexpected amazingness that is not structured that you have to take advantage of. That's an incredible thing.
And the person you met, that was your waiter yesterday, all of a sudden is the CEO of something, you know.
That's key. I mean, we often talk about the fact that the people in this room are going to interview each other for jobs.
Yes.
It's going to happen.
So take a good look around and be nice to each other.
Yeah, be nice.
Yeah, going on good.
You know, I think we're going to breed a whole generation of people who are being nice, because every time someone comes here, they talk about being nice.
But I mean really nice, because you can tell.
Which reminds me, we're going to talk for a while, but then we're going to ask questions. So I want to make sure, those of you that have been to these things before, you know that we want very, very smart questions. So be thinking about that. And yes, there is pressure.
I'm not running the show. I'd be like, heckle anytime, just yell out whatever you like. Join the conversation.
You can do that. So while you were hawking your postcards, you were posh. You were working at the Met with Diana Vreeland.
Oh my God, yeah.
Wow, what was that like?
Posh.
It's posh?
It was a great internship that I had, and actually I think I was introduced by somebody that you knew.
Yeah, well they knew Isabel could sew like crazy, so they needed hands up there.
And that was a beautiful experience for me. It was really what I always say that's when I realized this is what I want to do, because I was surrounded by the work of the masters, and it was in a house that was an art museum, and I recognized fashion as art. I realized, okay, because I've always loved art, and I would paint and I would draw, and I mean this is something that I love, but I still hadn't found my voice. I didn't know, and I made clothes to dress, never considering it as anything but just to dress. And when I went to the Met, I realized, here's what I need to do. This is what I need to do to express myself, and that's make clothes as art. Not as art, but the fact that clothes could be art, that it's appreciated as art. They are.
I think the idea that
just the fact that they're masters.
I think the idea that it was housed in a museum, right, and the idea that art lasts forever and fashion can last forever, as opposed to being ephemeral and of the moment. fashion design could last forever and be studied over the years.
And I realized that's what time looked like. I mean, I looked up and down, and you see portraits, and you see how do you describe it? Well, depending on the era, is what they're wearing, and I recognized it as an important art form.
I'm delighted you said that. You know, I have a continuing argument with a lot of European friends, especially the French, because they'll go, well, of course you've got all the designers around the world, then you've got the actual fashion designers. And it infuriates me, because, you know, there's the Chambre Syndicale de Couturier, who are the fashion designers apparently, and of course they are, but that's just not what it is. And I really like what you were saying about spending time on something, because you can do a t-shirt and it can be a work of art, full stop.
Absolutely. But you know, when the first person who called Isabel a couturier was Karl Lagerfeld, and Isabel never considered herself a couturier because she loves machinery, she loves mass production, and in fact, when we started showing collections, a lot of people told her, you should be showing in Europe because you're really a couturier, and she refused because she said, no, I'm an American, I love the practical, the pragmatic, and I love machinery. But in fact, we learned that the true meaning of the word couturier is just a dress made by an artist. So that stuck in our brain as, you know what?
Don't tell the French that.
There's something to that. Yeah, but there's something to that, because there's something about mass production. It doesn't mean it's artistic or creative, but it's mass production. And then there's the idea that somebody's soul is in something. But we're talking about a painting. That's a dress made by an artist. You know what I mean?
And there's also a difference between fashion and design, too, if you want to split the word apart. And when you think of Italians, wow, they're great designers. And, you know, there's also that thing of, in Europe, that some people talk about Italy as being great at design, and then Paris as fashion. So,
but what's beautiful is the difference, and the point. It's still clothes, it's still dresses, it's still T-shirts. But the fact is that we all view it differently, and that's important, because that difference is essential. If not, we all get bored, right?
Right.
Sometimes you're in the mood for a little fluff, and sometimes you're in the mood for pragmatic things, and sometimes you're in the mood for industrial design. So it's beautiful that you have all that whole range.
Well, everything's designed. Everything. This table, you know, that bottle, everything.
Exactly.
Somebody's thought.
So around about this time, it would be remiss if I didn't mention the fact that, Isabel, you studied at Parsons.
Yes, for 5 minutes, as he always says. No.
That was longer than that.
No, I was here longer, yeah.
So what do you remember about that?
Oh my God, here I took costume design and a lot of life drawing. And I took, in the other school on 13th Street, I took ceramic, which I loved. I loved throwing on the wheel. Mm. And it's funny because that really also made me feel that whole three-dimensional thing to fashion. I really look at fashion from all, it's not from a sketch. Again, since I'm not sketching, the wheel gave me that feeling of that three-dimensional.
Well, in fact, she never designs flat front and back. It's always in the
And when I work with students, it's all about, don't give me a drawing from front and back. Make sure you give me the side, because that makes you really look at all. That
is a very interesting challenge, and I you know, we love hearing about different work processes. You know, of course, some companies want it all on the CAD. Some companies only want it painted. Some people only drape. They don't know. Kay Unger, which is a fairly mass production dress manufacturer, she pin drapes everything. Yeah, there's barely a sketch in the place. So you really never know.
That's great.
Yeah, it's beautiful. So yes, I was here for a bit.
And at the time, you were working in retail.
Yeah.
How was that?
I always worked since I was a kid. Right. But eventually ended up in retail. But yeah, I worked at, it started at Fiorucci selling postcards, and then I went to Unique Clothing Warehouse, which is an amazing, I don't think that exists anymore, but that was an amazing retail scene in its own. That's what the birth of Annie Hall and The Sting and all this like kind of surplus vintage. Yeah, they didn't call it vintage then, it was just surplus clothes, you know, army surplus or old things. And my job was to go down in the basement, in the sub-basement below the subway, and try not to step on the ground because there was giant rats running there, and kind of discover old World War II uniforms or army flight suits and things like that. But it was an amazing experience because everyone went in there to shop, from Terry Mugler to Issey Miyake, and everybody was here shopping. Armani. This is where a lot of early sportswear got inspired in a way, because the clothes were made so practical and still inexpensive and almost no sizes. Yeah. So that really influenced fashion at the time.
It sort of suggests to me that it was clear you had a very curious mind. You know, you were looking for inspiration and opportunities to learn and experience new things. Because we often get questions here about what should students do in terms of internships. Should they just be going to be Isabel's assistant, or should they work in Banana for the weekend? Yeah, you know, and it seems like you can get something from everything.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, you know where he sends kids.
What, to work with the dry cleaners? Yeah, I said if you want to learn about clothes, work in the dry cleaners, because you have to fix zippers, you have to take up hands, you have to find out why does an armhole rip, and why does it, all that. You really
well, in a way, that's what I was doing at the Met, because I was actually repairing a lot of the old couture dresses and looking at all the stains of sweat and just what areas used to wear out the most, and where the enforcements were, and when they took in and out the sizes, depending on the family. I mean, that was a beautiful
So it's experience. A fancy dry cleaners.
It's a fancy, yeah. Maybe I'll open one.
But you know where I got all my...
That's a good quote.
We're both, first of all, immigrants. We came from Cuba when we were kids, but most of my education I got from Bugs Bunny. When I came here, I learned to speak English, and from just watching the cartoons, you learn who Rachmaninoff is, and who Frank Lloyd Wright is, and who Lana Turner is, and just by pure pop. So I think that's an amazing thing of being in the city and in America, period, in New York. You get this whole free pop culture education. If you're open to it, you know, it's unbelievable what you can learn.
It's incredibly important, and certainly we wouldn't be the school we are without New York City wrapped around us.
Right.
So let's just talk about the city for a while. I mean, how does that, think about ways that interacts with your life and how it influences what you're doing.
For me, it's everything. You know, just the pulse and the pace, and I couldn't live anywhere else.
The speed of it. I mean, that influences my work. But yet I'm very not a city person. Love the country, love the calm. I grew up in a small town. This is really him. He is really New York. And I tend to make oases in whatever place I live in or where I work. I try to create this really zen feeling that, and yet when we walk out the door, that contrast is very interesting to me.
But that said, Isabel's so cosmopolitan, you know. She's very social. She loves that part of the city. And I'm the opposite. I love the city, but I'm a hermit. I like being anonymous, and to get me to get out is a real...
You know he's a hermit.
Yeah.
You know.
I like to just work in my studio. But you know, our first studio was 2 blocks from here, 42nd Street, between 7th and 8th Avenue, when there was porno shops and Peepland and all that in that space.
It was a different city then.
That was our first space, and it was $75 a month. It was you know, you were able to get a foothold back then, so that's important.
I made it into a beautiful space, but it was tough.
So one of the things that we get a lot of attention for in the city now is Fashion Week. You know, people, as much as some may look down their nose at certain aspects of it, it's incredibly important and it's incredibly powerful. What are your thoughts on New York Fashion Week?
I think it's incredible. I think it's amazing. It's important for our industry. It's important for the identity of a designer to get known. I can't afford it nowadays, but it's just gotten so big.
That was the downside of it. It's such a big industry now that you really have to have some investment to participate in Fashion Week. If not, I mean, back in before, first of all, we got married in 1984, and that's when the collection was born, really, out of necessity. But
actually, I used to use the school. I used to use this space for my shows.
We did do some runway shows.
And it was great because everybody was around the area. You
but
know,
so this is before you were born. But in 1984, collections. There was no real Fashion Week. Right. It was a fashion. Yeah, it was a fashion week. It wasn't called that. But fashion shows were held all over Manhattan in any old ratty cafeteria or restaurant
or the showroom
or fancy places or showrooms.
People like us did the cafeteria.
Yeah. So there was a real kind of nomadic thing between here. So when the tents first happened, Isabel thought that's the best idea ever because it's all concentrated, and especially for Europeans who were covering the shows back then and buying, it was so important to kind of organize it. They knew where to land and they knew what to look at. So it was important.
So, but it seems like it's evolving now because we've got the tents, which is the posh, rich designers. But then you can show anywhere you want. You know, that's got to be a good thing.
Can you show anywhere you want?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to get on the calendar and you can show anywhere.
Still Ruth Finley? Love Ruth Finley. She helped us out, actually.
You
remember? Good old Ruth.
So, on the subject of displays, of course, you had that fantastic exhibition down at our friend's school down the road, FIT, which I hope you all saw it because it was magnificent, and we're forever in their debt for staging such wonderful exhibitions. What did this tell you about yourself as a designer, though, or the pair of you? Because to see all of your work like that in that magnificent staging, it must have been quite a moment.
You know, it's amazing that you can tell that I worked at the Met.
There it is again.
Yes,
excuse me. I must be hungry. No, you know, it was amazing to see. You know, our first exhibit was 1998 at FIT, and
right.
What was incredible to see was, for me, to start. It was the first time we stopped doing runway shows. We did shows nonstop from 1984 to 98. Then we stopped that year, did this exhibit at FIT, And to stand back and look at Isabel's work for what had been now 15 years or so, and to see how the very first designs from the first collection in 1984 related all the way to 1998. You could see it was a family tree. You could see the cousins and the uncles of all the designs and how they were all
process
connected.
was right there, and that's actually how we built the show.
Right.
When we realized, wait a minute, this is a good educational tool.
Right, it was going to be chronological order,
right.
And then we saw the links to different, as this little film tried to show, the links between certain themes that she had, Isabel had worked on, not even consciously, but the way she manipulates folds, the way she mirrors things, the way she creates layers. So we kind of grouped 15 years worth of work back then into that, and then recently almost 30 years worth of work now this time. But it's an amazing thing to, as designers, you'll have that moment where you stand back, look at your body of work, and you'll recognize how everything was linked to the next thing. Right. And in fact, like Isabel says, you're always creating your own design alphabet. You're creating from A to Z. And you're going to rearrange those letters forever and make your own sentences, and from that your own paragraphs. So there's an ongoing, evolving story. It's never ending. Design is never ending. Yeah. Fashion has a stop and a start. It has an expiration date, but this kind of thing really lasts forever. And that's
I definitely learned, it was interesting, but for me, working at the Met, I realized, oh, I have to keep my archives. Back then people didn't do this. I mean, really, most people got rid of their archives. And I realized I had to keep one of everything. And I have one of everything. And even models, because I used to pay with clothes, whenever you're done, send it back. And they would. It's
like
incredible.
Old orphans. They send the dress back.
Yeah, right.
I'm done.
Have you had a nice time?
Back a little bit beaten, but...
So let's talk about some of the milestones. It's clear that you have a very strong perspective on your career. I mean, you talk to some people and they're like, oh, I can't remember. But there's been a lot of very important things that have happened to you guys. What sticks out? Well, I'll give you one. I'm sure that when the First Lady wore your piece when she walked down the mall.
That was amazing.
Yeah.
Here I am still. I mean, really, that gave me a whole other breath, because it put me on a world stage.
Well, it was beyond fashion, you know? It was
of course, yeah.
Like history.
Yeah.
You stepped outside of fashion and it became world history.
I'm forever grateful.
That was an incredible moment,
That moment, it's incredible that I addressed that moment. It's really, what a...
Well, fashion is what time looks like, so that really
that's part of the reason why I wrote the book, because I really needed to link things. Why am I still here? Why do I do this? Or why am I doing this? Well, really, my whole concept always from the very beginning is about fashion and time, and that moment, I think, definitely represented that. So it's like full circle. I started at the Met looking at fashion as time, and I got to dress a very important time in our history. So.
Yeah, it was so. And did you know in advance that was what she was going to wear?
No, she was going to wear what she wore to Buckingham Palace early in the morning to the church, and then she was going to change, and nobody knew what she was going to wear after that.
Wow, so you were watching it along with everyone else.
Yeah. Wow. I really, in my gut, I always tell Ruben, I never even imagined it wouldn't be that one.
Because, it's funny, one of the questions I wrote down was about prestigious awards, but I don't actually want to ask you that, because it can't possibly mean anything like as much as that did.
You're absolutely right.
Winning an award, I mean, it's nice, but...
No, it's important because your peers recognize you, and we don't have that many awards, actually.
No, we don't.
We don't have awards.
So it's okay if you're a loser, it's a good thing. You'll end up in a good place. It's quite all right.
So, does anyone have any questions? I'm sure you do. I see one right there. We have microphones. Is there someone that can pass the microphone?
I'll just walk through it.
Oh,
why don't we do that?
Good to see you both. I was looking at your book, and you had something written about being a constructionist. Would you just share that with everyone?
A constructionist?
Yes.
Probably, I always say I'm a construction worker because I build. I'm constantly obsessed with building things. Anything. I look at everything. How is this made?
Yeah, how's it joined? How's it put together? That's a very important thing for her.
Everything. I'm constantly trying to figure out how is this put. I mean, I make his sculpture stand.
If not, they peel over in about 3 hours.
It's something
figures out
how
do they stand.
I'm obsessed with constructing things.
That's why her clothes really are made inside out in the sense that if the structure is what's important to her, the outside layers almost, here it comes again. how it looks on the outside is almost an afterthought of how it was built. You know what I mean?
It just
so it starts from
mimics
the inside.
I mean, it's like ripples when you throw a stone. It just, the inside really comes out to the outside.
Yeah, it's kind of an echo of what was happening inside.
So
it feels like a genuine integrity to the product. You know, you can't skim over things.
I try. Even if it's just one quick, fast seam, it has to mean something.
Well, it has to be new. That's a thing in our house. You can't.
Yeah.
Isabel will not make a dress just because it's beautiful or pretty. It has to mean something, and how it was made has to be new and original. If not, it doesn't see the light of day.
New and original, remember, to me.
Sure.
I mean, we're
big on telling students. A lot of people say, "Why should we reinvent the wheel?" And we're all about, yes, reinvent your own wheel, because you have to arrive at why you need that wheel and why it's yours, and that again is imprinting your
because everybody
DNA
also says, "Oh no, it's been done." It's like, no, you've not done it, so do it, because something that's the importance of making. Because the minute you make, it becomes yours. No matter how much you even got influence, or once you make it, it's yours, because how you solve that make becomes part of your vocabulary, and your solutions will then look like you.
It's one of the reasons why people are so critical of this whole cult of celebrity designers, and it's hard to put those two words in a sentence. But
some celebrities are nice people too.
They are.
And they could have design talent, maybe.
Yeah. But I'm always in mind of one particular who was pictured in Women's Wear Daily pinning garments on a bus form just before Fashion Week, as though.
Am I allowed to ask who? No.
J-Lo.
Really good. Well, he's a good actor.
Yes.
So there you
yes.
go.
Yes.
He's acting.
He's acting the part. Yeah, that's good.
Do we have another question from the audience?
Questions?
We have a microphone. Come on. Oh, there we go. Look.
Hi, Ruben. I'd like you to speak about your illustrations and a little bit about the state of illustration and fashion illustration today and where you think it's going.
You know what? Illustration has never been so popular. It's everywhere because it's a quick and it's faster than doing a photo shoot. It's certainly cheaper than doing a photo shoot. So illustration is alive and kicking. Maybe not what we think of as fashion illustration, where an artist comes in and sketches a couture dress. You know, people prefer to see the photograph of that. But certainly illustration in all its facets, it's never been more popular. And I think it's going to be more and more in demand, personally. Plus, people like the hand feel of things, you know. Computer graphics and all that is great, and but I personally work very fast, so I work faster than my computer. So I can do about 10 watercolors while we're still getting the scanner to behave, you know. So are you an illustrator yourself? Yes?
Yes.
Oh, you are? So you like to draw? You draw every day?
Well, actually, I'm in faculty, so
I'm
working now.
But yeah, I think the relationship to the eye and the hand is super important for designers and for anyone who creates something. Because the idea that you are taking the time to look at something that's outside of you and try to express it to the out there world, that's a very important moment. There's this relationship.
It goes through you.
This is like a marriage right at that moment. You become the thing becomes you, or you become the person you're drawing, or they become you. So that's a very important and almost sacred moment, you know what I mean? It's a very powerful thing. And when you're really doing it, people feel that. Again, you feel that.
It's like you can't not do it.
Yeah.
You have to do it.
Absolutely.
Because if you could be doing something else, you probably should.
Exactly. I agree.
Yeah.
But it's just a form it's a way of you having to communicate to the world what you're feeling, and it goes back to that idea of feeling. Isabel always says she loves to dress emotions, and feeling it's all about that, you know, and that just brings up a whole other impulse.
It's funny because even in photography, usually when the photographer connects to the model, that's when that perfect picture happens. Unlike when, you're just taking pictures and there's no chemistry, that's why it goes back to that circle. You have to really connect. And even in photography, that does happen. You know, when there's those moments that the photographer connects to the model, and boom,
yeah, it's magical.
There it is.
I think we all know when those pictures happen or those moments happen, it's magical.
Yeah.
We all live for those moments.
Do you have another question?
Hi, my name is Maria, and I go to NYU's Costume Studies program. And my question is for Isabel. I actually have a question in relation to your time at the Costume Institute, and I was thinking if there were a dream show that you would be interested in curating, who you would want to do that on, or if there were specific shows that you especially loved. I was just curious about that.
Goodness. You know, the time that I loved most was that intimate time I had with the clothes themselves. It wasn't necessarily one show. I mean, I loved all the shows because I loved to see Vreeland's vision come to life. I mean, that was amazing because the rooms were huge. And it became like a whole party of these mannequins. But for me, really it was the experience I had with the clothes themselves that I would love to do a show that all the garments are on the, you know, just
on the reverse?
On the reverse, yes.
That's
because that really gives you, it really talks to the feeling that that designer was having and how they solved all the problems. And also another thing for me was seeing all these garments in different sizes. The women, the shapes of the women were so different that was very, it was telling that.
And how things had been let in and let out. Isabel always tells me that, how much they were taken in and then let back out and then let back in during the same.
The life of the garments.
There's such a history in there.
Yeah. So no, I don't think.
That's an intimate show.
I love, even after I didn't do shows anymore, I love going to the museum and seeing, especially because you see the vision of the artist also, the curator.
I think it's wonderful. It's very heartening to see the attention that they're getting now. Of course, the obvious example last year was Savage Beauty.
Right.
You know, the most popular show they'd ever had.
Yes.
And it was an English fashion designer that many could be forgiven for not even knowing about outside of the industry.
Right.
And yet the response was unparalleled.
Yeah, well, again, fashion communicates. I think people's interest in fashion is so strong that even it follows it all the way into the museum.
I mean, even during the Vreeland times, their biggest visits were to the costume. It's just that now everything is on such a big scale that you get that many people.
But it always attracted so much.
It always attracted.
Yeah.
It really was incredible to see always the galleries full.
So again,
they also a lot of money. Sorry, they used to a lot of the funds. A lot of money was raised through the galas.
For the whole museum.
Popular for the museum.
Yeah.
Yeah. So fashion always.
Fashion and art.
Through.
There it is.
Brings in the crowd.
Yeah, there you
Yes.
go.
Any other questions? This is the time to know everything you ever wanted to know.
Ruben will tell you anything you ask him. Anything.
I do have a question. Should I go?
Yes.
We can hear you. I'll repeat it. Go ahead.
It's a pleasure to see you today. And you guys have been working successfully for all these years. What is the secret?
So for those of you who didn't hear, what's the secret of working so successfully all these years together?
Changes through the times. Is there something?
Stay nimble. Oh my God.
You know, for me, it's easy. It's love. If you don't have the love, it's not worth it. So I have the easy job. I've got the easy job. You got to love what you do, and you got to love who you're doing it with, and you have to love your surroundings. Like Isabel says, you don't have to love it every single day. That's okay. I don't like to throw out the garbage or do the wash, but I do it. You know, there's that moment where you have to do what you got to do. But you should love the main thing. You got to love something about what you're doing. Enough
think
that you
of that
keep doing
one thing that you do love. Keep that always in your mind. Because yes, you have to do all these other things you don't love, but there's got to be that one little thing that you love that keeps you coming back.
But you know, even when we hire someone, we always we have a test. It's like, you got to love this person enough that, because you know they're going to mess up, and you know you're going to have a problem. But you got to like them enough to say, okay, I understand. I've told you 20 times and you're still doing it wrong, but I like you. There's something about you I like. It's very important. That's very important.
They never leave.
So it's that magnified, you know. That is the secret. You got to really love what you're doing and love the people you're doing it with and your industry. I mean, believe me, we wouldn't be doing this if we didn't love fashion and art and the mashup that happens when that occurs. It's very essential. I mean, Isabel's known as a fashion person, but in fact, she sneaks over to the art side constantly. And I'm an artist, but I'm the one who took the clothes out and sold them to stores and dealt with the buyers and all that. So
I don't think I would be doing this if it wasn't for this one.
Well,
I really, no, for myself, always. That was part of me
just sewing,
doing what I did. But you really thought, oh, you know, there's something here. I mean, you had been in retail. So obviously you felt there was something that...
Well, I know when somebody has talent, that's for sure, and I knew Isabel had something
that's
to
why
offer.
I keep doing it.
But and also fashion is a good way to make money. It's honestly...
Yes.
Again, we started with nothing. People say, how did you start? Did you invest? Or we started with absolutely nothing. Right?
Actually, the gift we got when we got married from everybody. Do you know that?
I don't even know we had a gift. Yeah.
Oh, yes.
It's more like I had a student loan to take care of.
Oh, yeah, but you didn't do that right away.
But so we didn't invest in it, so it was, you can only sink or swim, right? So it just grew and grew from there. And I think this is an amazing field and an amazing city that is hungry for new energy and new ideas. So if you have something new to offer, there's always someone ready to listen, and that's a powerful thing, you know? I think that's the beauty and the freedom that we experience here. You know, that there's always, and fashion is so broad, there's always such an audience. There's no one way to look or design or to, so there's always someone who's going to be interested in your work if you are sincere to your work. But you got to be sincere, there's no lying, you can't get away with that.
And in a way also, we both love art, and we probably would not have just been able to be artists because we had to make a living. And fashion allows people to, in a way...
It does. It even allows artists to join that community, which is really important, you know? You don't have to be a giant corporation.
Yes. You said...
We have a question back here first.
You said that you couldn't, at this moment, afford to do the tents.
Mm-hmm.
Is that okay with you, or...?
Yes, actually most people would say, you know, that's not a smart idea because you won't survive. But now it's been almost 15 years that I haven't done shows. It's incredible.
So it was your choice way back 15 years ago?
Yes, and I stopped showing in 1998. My last show was
and in
a
the
winter.
meantime, it's gotten much, much bigger.
Yes, yes.
Much, much more.
Well, because every single penny got put back into my own work.
Right.
So my studio got bigger. I have more seamstresses.
Yes.
We got more machinery, so you actually invest more money in what you do.
You put it back into a product.
But it is a dangerous thing. You're not participating in the media aspect of fashion, which is very important. It's an important aspect, you know, that showmanship part. So we're not there. But at the same time, you're enriching your product. What you make is actually getting richer for the reason, you know.
There is a key point there.
Oh yes.
There is a key point, which is. And we hear it a lot from PRs. If you've got some money and you're not spending it on fabric you can use to make actual clothes, then you're probably wasting it early on, because you should not be paying for promotion of something that you don't even have.
And it's interesting, but one of the things I have about public relations is usually get a friend around in the beginning. I mean, of course, this is not only also because you need to have your voice be heard to direct to the media. That other person is in the middle. You don't get that. They don't get to know you enough. But if you have to call them up, and if you try to get through to them, and there's a relationship that you start building, which I think is important. Instead of having it be, again, that very professional, you know, you just get the phone call.
Yeah, it's about communicating your passion, isn't it, in any which way you want.
Yes.
You get it.
I know we have a question over here.
The link is really important.
Yeah.
Hi. It's a thrill to hear you both speak. It's pretty amazing. I've been following your work for a long time, since '98, that exhibit. I will have a question for Isabel. How do you keep the noise out? We're surrounded by fashion. In the city, it's in every social media, it's on the street, the trends are screaming at you, and especially I think it's important for the students. How do you keep the noise out, and how do you come back to yourself? Because you're working at a very deep sort of self-knowledge level. What's your process?
You know,
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good question.
Yeah, I take in what I want. I choose what it is that I'm taking in. So I create an environment that I am really at ease, and it's a place that I can be experimental. I feel comfortable. I don't think I'm affected with all that noise. It's a choice that I don't need.
Can I butt in too?
Okay.
First of all, Isabel's she's really an observer, so she's by nature, it's not hard for her to block out what she's not interested in. And she really observes what she's very interested in, like watching the trees grow.
Actually, I think I'm interested in everything.
You are.
But
except she's a woman, so funny enough, if everyone's doing red, she automatically does not want to do red. So there's a natural
reaction.
There's a natural like how do you want to call it? Like you definitely go your own path, and she respects women enough to know, I think, that her clients are the same. If everything's leopard skin and like this, she's going to go the opposite.
You don't need me to do it, that's for sure.
Right, there's enough of that. So she not naturally wants to explore new territories and new roads.
It's funny, because even as a woman, there was a time that I'll wear the same thing, like these things, they're all different fabrics, and they're still all different, but it's the same design. And then I won't look at it for another 3 years. You know, in my own closet, you tend to really constantly wear one thing or feel a certain vibe, and then all of a sudden you can't even, you don't want to go there again. You've moved on. So
But you know, it also makes sense business-wise because fashion is it's its own ecosystem, and fashion has to start somewhere. Usually, we're a small company, so what we invent or the designs Isabel makes have to be at least 5 years ahead of their time for it, because first of all, they're very expensive. So any woman investing in it wants to wear it at least 5 or 10 years. So they have to be that forward. They have to be that aesthetically that forward, and that's in keeping with you.
But I don't get the sense you actually think, is this far forward enough? I get the sense that it's very much, this is my vision.
Sure.
This is what I do.
Sure.
I do push myself. Maybe it's within my own work. You know, how am I doing this? What does this mean? No matter what it is that I'm doing, I'm trying to capture this new feeling. Even if it looks the same, for me, there's something about it that all of a sudden sparks something in me that's the fashion point. All of a sudden, I've got to do that. I've got to make it. And that's the moment of pushing forward. And remember, for myself, not forward within everybody else. I don't know what everybody else is doing, whatever. And it's great not to be so aware of what everyone else is doing.
But we always tell kids you should be in your own little bubble, creative bubble, for as long as possible, because at one point you will have to join the human race, and at that point you have to share your language. But there's a point where you're still incubating and you're still in your little embryo, creative embryo. So be as obsessive and as focused and as live in that little creative bubble as long as possible.
Then we will all make room for you.
Exactly. You come to fashion or culture. Period. Art, music, all of that is a giant stew. So when you come to that giant stew, you have to make sure you're bringing your unique ingredients, something we've never tasted before.
Yeah.
You know, if we already have rutabagas, don't bring rutabagas. Yes. Bring what's unique to you. So that's very, very important.
Other artists want to see that.
Sure.
That's that collaboration.
And that's that
welcoming.
Yeah, absolutely.
So we have time for one more question. Hold on just a second. There's a microphone just been passed over there.
Hello.
We'll do two then. You can have yours.
Hi, it's so wonderful to hear both of you speak. I actually have two questions, if that's okay.
If they're quick.
My first question is, how do you stay true to yourself when you're designing and not focus on whether the people that you're designing for will actually, how they will receive your designs, or will they actually wear them? That's a question. Is there a balance between designing what it is you really want to design, or do you have to think about, am I going too far? Are my clients actually going to want to wear this?
I'll answer that quickly. Okay. I won't abort an idea. I definitely have to make it. No matter what I think somebody will wear it or not, I have to create this. If somebody else sees my vision, great. But okay. I have other things that I'm going to be selling. But I never let go of anything. On the contrary, the more challenging, the more I stick to it. The more I stick to it, and I don't give it up. And many times I'll talk about it. Those ugly ducklings.
We call them the ugly ducklings because I don't even want to sell it. It's so hideous. But Isabel must make it, and it's too advanced for me to even understand. But sure enough, one of our wonderful buyers will walk in from Barney's and say, "I love that. Can you make it in black?" And I'll take it. So it's who am I to know, right?
No, and many times that thing hanging there speaks to you, and all of a sudden something else happens to it.
We're big believers in not editing your creativity. You've got to let it out. And then, don't worry, the world will edit for you, or your buyer will edit for you and not buy it. But that's okay, but we're spoiled. From the beginning, when we started, always the most interesting designs sold the best at retail. But the buyer was always hesitant to buy it. But we learned fast. You know what? Your most creative ideas, actually, women are ready to take it in, because you're offering a new vision.
I did have that experience once in the very beginning, the very first collection. And a buyer came in and said, "I love this dress." I was so excited. "Love this dress. Blah, blah, blah. Can you remove the sleeves?" I laughed.
Yeah.
He took care of them because I didn't remove the sleeves. And the dress was the dress was simple. It was all about the sleeve. And I realized, you don't need me for the dress.
This is a natural impulse in buyers, though. If there's something outrageous, but then that one simple thing, they'll pick the simple thing just to knock the breakthrough.
We call them designer butts. I'm not a designer butt.
What's your other question?
Thank you. My second question is, what advice would you have for somebody who is changing careers and to become a fashion designer, not starting early on, but starting in their mid-30s?
You know what? It's a big, nasty, dirty secret maybe, but only women that are over 30 actually buy fashion because they need it. When you're younger than that, you can wear T-shirts or be naked, in fact. But as you grow older, that's when fashion becomes important. So you're in a good place with 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s. That's the actual age group that women really buy clothes.
They
know what to do with it. They have the money to buy it, and they have a life to lead in it. You know. So that's a good point, and use your point of view to give that knowledge to women. No?
Yes.
It's such a good point, because one always imagines the designers have as their muses these 20-something waifs, when in fact they're not the ones that are spending any money, especially not them, because they get it all for free.
Yeah.
But you're right, real women are the ones who buy clothes.
Real women with real bodies are the ones who really need clothes. That's who wears clothes.
So we have one question over here. This will be our last one.
Yeah, I have a question about, I want you to talk a little bit about the book, and I wonder if you have any projects in Spanish. I speak Spanish, so since you're Cuban, I am curious about this. Thank you.
Huh? So
the question was, if you have any projects in Spanish.
And if you can speak a little bit about the book.
Okay. Speak about the book as far as being translated into Spanish, or actually I'm hoping that it's first Portuguese. I hear. I hope it happens. And we do have a few projects actually happening. Maybe is it Mexico?
Maybe in Mexico and
Frida Kahlo's.
Yeah.
Maybe I shouldn't be talking about these things.
Maybe not.
but
no one's listening. It's okay.
Did you mean like the Cuban roots thing and the whole background? Yeah, it does.
Oh my God, that's the only part that Ruben's not in, actually.
First chapter.
The first chapter.
Well, I'm from Cuba too, though.
Yes, you are.
Right.
I know you.
All right.
You know, for the Cuban part of my life was probably what introduced me to my senses, the smell, how I look at things, the contrast of color. Oh my God, everything. The women. I have a huge amount of aunts, and they were all so different. And I think I was very comfortable in a woman's world, very comfortable. And I don't know, for Cuba just gave me my sensibility, I think. How I see color is totally from where I was born, which is a small, the light there hits a certain way.
I think there's a magical realism thing to Isabel's work, a very poetic, I don't want to say sad, but there's a very melancholy, poetic kind of magical realism where it could be the simplest thing. It's not at all showy, and it's not at all theatrical, but it's such an inward thing that it touches the emotion. Yeah. I think that's very, very, I don't know,
but I think that has to do more with the fact that I'm constantly trying to make things have meaning. That's that sense of sad.
No, just melancholy and emotional.
Yes.
That's true. It's vulnerable. There's something vulnerable about it, which is very beautiful. Because I think it's something very raw. Yeah. So you're exposing your thoughts and your ideas. So that's always a thing. I don't know. There's something not urban or not New York City.
So you're Cuban
I
also?
am Colombian.
Colombian. Wow.
So you're a designer as well?
No, I am fashion marketing.
Great. Excellent.
Okay, so as we draw to a close, I wonder about what's next. I mean, you mentioned something in Mexico which you can't talk about, so we won't come back to that. But is there anything that you're working on now that we should be looking out for, that you can talk about?
Can we talk about something?
You know, we have already so many projects juggling that I can never, like, I'll be working on, there's probably 2,000 things that we're not doing while we're sitting here that we should have been doing. That's the bad thing of being a small company, you have to do it all. There's joys in that, but there's also, like, guilt. Why am I here doing this? Finishing that other project. But,
I'm actually trying to remember.
But don't you have an auction happening?
I do, yeah, that's true. There's a bit of an thank you for reminding me.
Well, in which case, I think perhaps we shouldn't put you on the spot. So I want to say thank you, Ruben and Isabel. It's been spectacular. Please give them a round of applause.
Thank you.
So they've graciously agreed to hang around for a few minutes at the front. So queue up and grab a lock of hair or something, and then I'll be dragging them off.